Hi, good morning and afternoon to everybody. My name is Nikki Brett. I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at the Learning Bar. I'm going to make a few brief introductions. We have Joel Henderson, who is the Research Associate here, along with Christine Hall. She is coming online shortly. Welcome to the second webinar in our new Wellbeing Learning series, From Data to Action, Learn Proven Strategies to Bolster Staff Wellbeing. Just a quick overview of the format. The webinar is going to be about 30 or 40 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor to Q&As. Feel free to put the Q&As in, but we'll probably address those at the end of the webinar. To let you know, this webinar is being recorded, and a member of the team will follow up just to ensure you get the recording. Before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the traditional ancestral territory of our First Nations people in our respective locations on which we are learning, working, and gathering today. We pay our respects to the members past and present with honor and gratitude as they have stewarded the land throughout these generations. I am confident that we will continue to work together in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Thank you. So without further ado, a bit of information about our presenter, Joel. He is a member of the research team at the Learning Bar and works closely with school districts across Canada to support their needs. His particular focus is on assisting school leaders as they understand and explore their OurSCHOOL student data. So I'd like to hand it over to Joel.
Thank you, Nikki. Hi, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, and thank you for setting aside this time with our team to understand how you can better support your staff to improve well-being outcomes for the broader school community. We at the Learning Bar, we're a research-based company, and our products and services allow schools to leverage data to build thriving school communities. But in order to do that, schools need to not only collect data, but also act upon it with effective strategies. So today, I'll walk you through a few of the key organizational factors related to staff well-being, explore some of the outcomes pertaining to those factors, and most importantly, outline strategies you can use in your school to impact and improve staff well-being. So our hope is that, equipped with this information, you can start the conversations in your schools towards creating strategies to support staff well-being. Before I start, I should note that this work focuses on data-driven decision-making to put targeted well-being initiatives in place. So whether it's based on your own internal tools or anecdotal data, perhaps more formal methods, in any case, we recommend first collecting data and then basing your staff initiatives on that data. And one way to collect valid and reliable data is through the OurSCHOOL Well-Being Survey, which, when paired with these strategies, sets the stage for a collaborative process to impact staff outcomes. As I mentioned, the goal of this presentation is to introduce research-based interventions proven to be effective in impacting staff well-being. Before we highlight these strategies, we will give insight into staff perspectives and highlight the importance of well-being. The presentation will then shift to a discussion on how various work-related factors contribute to staff well-being, and we'll then move on to strategies associated with those work-related factors, and finally, a few final comments before we close. Research consistently highlights the interconnectedness of staff well-being, job performance, and student outcomes, emphasizing the need to address the mental and emotional health of educators. And it should be noted that throughout this webinar, I will use the term educator for simplicity, but this term will be used to reflect all staff who work within our schools, because every staff member within the school system has an important role to play in ensuring a positive school climate. Well-being is closely linked to job satisfaction, as satisfied staff are more likely to be engaged in their work, leading to greater productivity and job performance. Also, staff well-being helps foster a sense of community among educators, which creates the right environment for effective teaching and learning, because a focus on staff well-being also promotes a culture of continuous improvement and professional development, because educators are more likely to engage in learning and collaboration when they feel supported. When this happens, educator well-being can have a positive impact on students, as happy, healthy staff are more likely to create a positive learning environment to foster positive academic and social outcomes for students. Educational continuity and stability, those are important for students, and prioritizing the mental and physical health of school staff is also crucial for staff retention. Stress and burnout, they have an adverse effects on health, and a focus on well-being and the ability to cope with those stressors can help prevent these issues. Currently, teacher shortages are recognized as a global phenomenon, and though many factors contribute to educator attrition, poor working conditions and high levels of stress are frequently cited as major causes. Newer educators who experience significant work stress are more than twice as likely to want to leave the profession. And while the research pertaining to the exact cost of teacher turnover is somewhat limited, estimates suggest that the cost of losing one teacher exceeds $20,000 US. Educator attrition has a ripple effect as well, as those who leave the profession increase workloads for their former colleagues and then take valuable school-specific knowledge with them as well, resulting in additional training and further administrative costs. The impacts of educator shortages may even discourage prospective teachers from entering the field, and that creates a cycle of lowering standards within education to meet the staffing demands, which consequently disadvantage future students. And we're already seeing instances of inexperienced or unqualified educators being employed by districts because of the lack of qualified candidates. So the need to focus on staff well-being is not something that can be ignored, and data-driven decisions are the key to creating effective targeted strategies. The teaching profession is known to be a stressful occupation, and this is supported by research findings which indicate that in comparison to the general working population, teachers experience more work-related stress, burnout, and poor mental health. In fact, teachers have stress levels that are comparable to first responders, police officers, and prison guards. This stress is a result of the multifaceted nature of jobs in education, and the reality is that over time, education has become progressively more complex. So educators are faced with ever increasing and demands and ever-changing responsibilities with less time and fewer resources. What's more, educators are often expected to participate in additional duties that further draw on that time and those resources, including acting as a support system for students. This means that they're responsible for student well-being as well as education. So overall, that intensification of the profession is having negative impacts on staff and ultimately students. Educators deal with a wide variety of stressors on a daily basis, and high stress levels can be detrimental to the quality of their work. That's why we need to address the underlying causes of staff stress, and through a continued investment in a positive school climate, schools can help mitigate the impacts of stress and burnout. But in order to do this, schools need targeted interventions to address the key issues that school staff are experiencing. When we think of staff well-being, there can often be a bit of a disconnect between the actual concerns of school staff and the assumed problems. So another goal for today will be to help show you how data can be used to bridge the gap and inform school leaders. Oftentimes, schools lack data-driven approaches, and instead they rely on anecdotal data, which doesn't really provide a complete picture of school climate. And further, this approach leads to assumptions about the underlying causes for those given problems. This means that when it comes to interventions, schools are left to more intuition-based decisions or hunches rather than valid and reliable methods. But by capturing staff perceptions using proven methods, schools and districts come to understand where opportunities for intervention exist and can then make data-driven decisions to address those areas with targeted, effective interventions. And that's where OurSCHOOL comes into play, which, when combined with proven strategies, will allow schools to capture, analyze, and measure the effectiveness of those interventions and the impact they're having on overall school climate. Organizational and institutional factors shape school climate, which is a broad term that captures not only the physical aspects of the school, like the infrastructure and resources, but also the social interactions and emotional experiences within your schools and the school environment. This can include things like relationships, health and well-being, and overall organizational effectiveness. When addressing staff-related considerations or areas for improvement, we tend to focus more so on the institutional factors, such as providing safe and inclusive schools or delivering quality instruction. However, we often overlook the organizational characteristics that will support positive health and well-being outcomes for school staff that ultimately allow them to be at their best to support students. Today, we will examine both the organizational and institutional factors associated with staff well-being outcomes and the interventions we can use to support them. And now I'm going to pass things over to Nikki for a moment.
So before we go into the strategies, I wanted to go through some of the feedback. So when you all registered, we asked a series of questions, and one of the questions was, what are the main wellbeing challenges in your schools and districts? And these are the results from those questions. So we went through this feedback, and it's really helped to guide the content of this presentation and to provide us with focus. So when we asked what the main wellbeing challenges were, across the board, we heard teacher burnout. So this burnout is leading to staff shortages as educators leave. The staff remaining are already dealing with an increased workload, and because of this and increasing responsibilities, the reduced number of staff are actually taking on even more, and it's impacting the well-being of the staff. So that's what you can see really when you look at this pie chart. I'm sure that none of this is any great surprise to any of you. The second question I asked was around how districts are addressing these challenges, and I actually haven't shared those, and the reason I haven't shared them is because there were so many. So what struck me was there was a lot of challenges. Every system or every district is addressing those in different ways, but yet they're all facing the same challenges. So I thought that would be useful. So I want to thank you for your input. I'm going to hand it over to Joel, who'll be covering strategies for one of the main challenges outlined here, and that was workload. And then he'll follow up with a job control, which is tightly knitted together, and then other key organizational factors that impact well-being. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. So next, I'll introduce research-based interventions proven to be effective in impacting staff well-being by targeting key organizational characteristics. And these strategies will be outlined at the broader school level, reflecting how the institution as a collective organization can help shape well-being. And they're also supported by the scientific literature and have been thoroughly tested across a variety of occupations, including education. During the registration process, when we asked what well-being concerns you were currently facing, 46% of responses included increasing workload and burnout, as Nikki alluded to. An unmanageable workload is a key predictor of workplace stress, burnout, and intent to leave the profession. And schools can reduce workload by regularly connecting with staff to discuss current workloads and where any concerns exist. One way is to work alongside employees to help them prioritize their work, highlighting both essential and non-essential tasks. You should also try to reduce those non-essential responsibilities by looking for opportunities to either eliminate or even postpone that work to a later date, and if possible, carve out dedicated time during school hours to complete things like administrative tasks and lesson planning. We know that's easier said than done, so other options could include things like reducing the number of meetings, thinking twice about sending unnecessary emails, and really essentially paring down anything that may distract employees from their key responsibilities. And also look into arrangements that might help redistribute tasks or reduce the workload. One school that we work with, they reported that sharing and rotating assignments, those are things that really help them distribute a workload within their schools. So addressing workload really boils down to providing a supportive work environment that understands and addresses staff concerns. And as a follow-up to this webinar, a member of our team will provide you with a more detailed breakdown of what you can do to really address those workload challenges. We see it every day. You come into work and you have a list of tasks or priorities ahead of you, and some of those things you can move ahead quickly and advance yourself, while others have to go through other people to advance. Yet we know that employees really value autonomy in the workplace. And while not everything will be negotiable, some key strategies to enhance that job control include trusting the expertise and intuitions of your staff by giving them greater freedom to determine how their work is done, including the specific processes involved. And this can be as simple as allowing for discretion in how, for example, educators carry out their teaching duties, things like instructional delivery, assessment, and disciplinary considerations as well. We also recommend searching for opportunities to give staff greater choice in how they structure key aspects of their workday, and that could include the sequence and pace of their work, and also to allow for flexible arrangements for any tasks that aren't really urgent. Also, it's always good practice to create an environment where staff are regularly consulted on organizational and role-related matters by developing both formal and informal channels to solicit feedback. And we know that sometimes staff can feel uncomfortable providing constructive feedback. However, something along the lines of a suggestion box or scheduling regular touch points with staff in some other way, that can be really effective. And provide transparency around any changes that result from staff input. And you can provide that transparency in meetings or any regular reports that you might issue. Staff are more likely to see their feedback as meaningful when they have an opportunity to see any changes that might result from that feedback and those insights. Because when it comes to job control, even small changes can make a big difference. Related to job control is the concept of role ambiguity. Role ambiguity is a form of conflict that can occur when employees have unclear expectations about their role or otherwise assigned tasks. It can also occur when an employee receives different expectations from multiple individuals, or when they're asked to perform two or more conflicting tasks. Work roles provide reliability and stability for an organization, and providing clearly defined work roles, by doing that, schools can reduce work-related stress and improve organizational outcomes. So in order to reduce role ambiguity in the workplace, we advise establishing work contracts that contain really detailed descriptions and clearly defined tasks. These should outline the expectations and responsibilities for each role, and at the same time ensure that all board and school level policies, that those and any associated documentation are equally unambiguous with regards to work-related roles and responsibilities. And beyond those considerations, be sure to take the time to just sit down and discuss role-related considerations with staff to ensure that any tasks that are not in their job description, that potentially they're added or alternately eliminated altogether. Those are the kinds of discussions that really provide avenues for employees to openly express role-related concerns. And also, it's best practice to reinforce the key responsibilities and objectives related to any given role in an organization. And this is something that can be further highlighted within a formal performance review process. Now, we all like to be praised. Who doesn't like to be recognized in their job? I mean, just think of how that might make you feel, or how it does make you feel when it happens. Of course, individuals value a work environment that acknowledges their achievements and recognizes their efforts. But feeling undervalued due to a lack of recognition can result in higher turnover rates. And for that reason, school leaders should make appreciation a part of workplace culture by regularly acknowledging the contributions of school staff.
Joel, I'm going to just jump in here. I went over some of the registration details, and I've made a few notes of how you're recognizing and validating staff. did want to give you a moment to reflect and to share some of the things that you're doing in the chat. So if you could put some ideas down in the chat, that would be great. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds, type quickly, to do that. But to give you an idea of some of the things that I did here, we had thank you notes, random acts of appreciation. I'd be interested to hear what that was. Thank you emails, and also thank you for in staff meetings and that kind of thing. So do we have anybody who was sharing that? We didn't have anything. Oh wait, there. So wow. So Friday Valentine's. These are short cards that are very specific that recognize contributions a staff member has made that week. Is that every Friday? That's brilliant. Thank you, Roger. Oh, I avoid individual acknowledgements in the group. Every Friday. Thank you, Roger. I think we're going to try and do that in the office here. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Joel.
Thanks. Other ways that you could potentially recognize school staff, really get into using recognition to reinforce the values, behaviors, and attitudes expected of your employees. And we recommend really striking a fine balance between both the informal and formal types of recognition when doing so. So sometimes a casual mention in a conversation or perhaps an email, maybe that's sufficient. But other times, maybe it could be an awards event or a luncheon, and maybe those are more appropriate in some instances. But find a balance is the key. Basically, you need to consider individual preferences in terms of the frequency and type of acknowledgement that's being given. Usually, you know your staff well enough, and they'll provide some kinds of cues as to what their preferences are. When in doubt, just ask though, don't want to get that wrong. And however you choose to acknowledge your employees, ensure that the recognition is specific enough to be considered both authentic and meaningful to the recipients. That's the key, authentic and meaningful. And you can do this by clearly articulating how the individuals or collective staff, how their efforts are making a difference at the school. And we also suggest praising both individual and collective efforts and encouraging staff to follow suit in celebrating the achievements of their colleagues. For example, this could be done in some way by soliciting feedback from even students or parents and then other staff, and then circulating this information internally when the time is appropriate. And using these kinds of staff-focused approaches to recognition can be one way of improving staff retention.
If I just jump in again, Joel. So one of the things, there's lots of ideas, lots of things going in on the chat. But one of the things I thought was really great from Heather, beginning meetings with well-being. I like that. We actually did that at one of the events recently and really helped to set the scene. Sorry, thank you.
No, thank you for sharing. Okay, moving along, collaboration. Collaboration occurs when individuals work together to achieve a common goal. And within the school setting, a collaborative school culture involves employee participation in discussions and decisions that directly impact either them or the school environment. Ideally, collaboration, that's something that we would hope occurs naturally in a working environment. However, when workload is high, collaboration, it can diminish. So it's important to find ways to increase collaboration and also over time develop formal procedures for collaborative decision-making processes. And you can do that through creating shared vision and mission statements, things that really help unify the staff towards a common set of goals or philosophies. And this helps develop a sense of community as well, where everyone understands and hopefully respects each other's expertise and the role that plays in achieving that vision or those goals. Employees can also have a say in school affairs and any key decisions that might impact their jobs, and that builds a sense of shared responsibility and identity within the school. And to do those things effectively, you first need to facilitate some type of structure or more so expectation for a collaborative work environment. And that doesn't happen all at once, but you could start with establishing one collaborative team and then working on a specific project. And then eventually you could build up to a series of collaborative teams. So start small, then go big. And you can also create opportunities for distributed leadership to build out further collaboration in the workplace. And communication is really the key to a work environment that supports collaboration. Speaking of which, communication. So communication involves both formal and informal exchanges. And oftentimes, we feel we're doing the best we can when it comes to communicating things, but doubling down, reflecting, and ensuring that staff are informed through effective communication practices will go a long way to building trust with school leaders. Before I move on, I want to ask you, though, what method do you most frequently use to communicate with your staff? And I think Nikki has a poll of sorts ready for us in relation to that question.
I do. So I've just put it live now. So I will give you a couple of seconds to fill that in. It was quite interesting to see on how some of the challenges are actually being addressed. How many people did put check-ins, whether or not it was daily or weekly. But I'm going to share this with you. Hold on, it's people are still inputting, so I just want to give them a chance, Joel. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, and I'll share the results. So I just realized, Joel, you can't see this.
Actually, I can. It seems to be a three-way tie between in-person, email, and staff meetings.
Great. All right. Thank you.
So, yeah, rather uniform responses there. Thank you for participating. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. What I really wanted to emphasize with that poll activity is that effective communication practices, they can vary, and they help create a school culture where decisions are driven and supported by all staff. So when addressing your school staff, be sure to provide clear, concise, and timely communications about school affairs that directly affect school staff. And one way to keep staff informed of school affairs is by holding regular meetings supported by things like the ones in the poll, so emails, phone calls, other methods of communication, but really anything, like I said, it varies. Anything to create awareness within the school community, experiment with multiple methods, that would be well advised. Also, give careful consideration to the multiple perspectives of school staff when developing your messaging, so the actual wording you choose to use. You want to develop an organizational culture where individual perspectives are recognized and embraced. So be sure to also give the opportunity to ask questions and lend voice to any concerns about things transpiring within the school. So basically what that does is when staff perceive concern, encouragement, and support from school leaders, they'll be more willing to make considerable efforts to work towards those common goals. So institutional considerations are the second set of factors that shape the culture of successful schools. So we're going to shift now to those. And when we consider employee well-being, we need to focus on institutional factors because this is a multifaceted area that encompasses not only the school environment, but also bullying and school safety procedures, sexual harassment protocols, and efforts to promote diversity and inclusion and actively prevent exclusion. So it goes without saying that developing safe and inclusive school environments for students and staff should be a high priority for school leaders. For staff, the school environment is an important facet of their work life, and that can be affected by a school's policies and practices. When addressing the broader school environment, we should focus on a school climate characterized by care, collaboration, and innovation. And this can be really, this can help foster relationships among school staff to really enhance perceptions of school connectedness. I know that some of you are supporting this through your own initiatives to, create strategies for staff events and the like. And if this applies to you, once again, you can share those types of activities within the chat, because I'm sure other members of the webinar would greatly benefit from sharing that information. Anything you do to really have staff come together. Also, institutional factors that allow staff to perform to the best of their abilities are important. And that can include equitable policies and practices. We recently did an event in this regard at Rocky View Schools, and some information in that regard that will be shared with you. We'll forward that along. And seemingly an obvious strategy, but one still worth mentioning, ensuring effective teaching practices, so that educators are following a model of instruction that helps students reach their full potential. This includes things like instructional clarity, relevance, rigor, and feedback. Violence and bullying directed at educators is an unfortunate reality for those working within the education system. This can include disrespectful behavior, verbal threats, and physical assault. Exclusion and sexual harassment can also be considered forms of bullying. School staff must feel safe to do their jobs effectively, and schools can address bullying concerns by developing policies and procedures that support both students and staff. This can include transparency among school staff around existing protocols for bullying incidents, as well as any anticipated improvements, offering training programs that teach school personnel to understand, identify, and intervene appropriately when bullying occurs, as many working in education may not feel adequately equipped to handle those kinds of incidents when they do occur. Establishing a formal tiered structure for threat management that involves identifying and tracking misbehaviors, and making sure that there are clear consequences for things like bullying, as schools need to ensure that effective bullying policies are not only in place, but that they're consistently enforced and that victims are supported as well. Next, we'll turn our attention to the positive outcomes that result from prioritizing the organizational and institutional characteristics we just discussed. These outcomes, they really underscore the importance of investing in a positive school climate, because when we embed effective strategies that support educator well-being in these areas, we can expect to see increases in job satisfaction, sense of belonging, the ability to thrive, improvements to work-life balance, and coping skills to deal with stressful situations. Though the approaches pertaining to each of these well-being outcomes varies, there are several broad overlapping strategies that can help enhance these areas. So first, cultivate a sense of community and provide opportunities to form social bonds, something we referred to earlier, and that leads to an inclusive work culture where individual differences are accepted, all staff have equal rights, and employees feel understood. You can further enhance school connectedness by providing opportunities for staff to have input on school-related decisions, and wherever possible, empower employees by allowing them to determine how their work is done, how to complete that work. Also make work personally meaningful by giving staff the flexibility to work in areas that they're most passionate about. So you can do that by working with each staff member to document their interests and consider assignments or projects that align with those interests. And don't forget to support professional growth by offering flexible opportunities for career development that allow staff to build new skills. And you could also provide staff with opportunities to experience a variety of roles and assignments, things that might give them exposure to new skill sets. These actions, they all go a long way towards a school climate where staff feel supported in both their day-to-day responsibilities and long-term career goals. We also recommend facilitating regular check-ins with staff to help them prioritize their work and ensure they feel supported with their day-to-day responsibilities and general concerns. And to prevent burnout, reduce workload wherever possible. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this is easier said than done. But as we noted, job-related stress is a given when we consider the multifaceted and highly demanding nature of jobs in education. So school leaders should strive to develop a work culture that helps staff cope with those daily stressors. Improvements in each of these areas can be achieved by using online survey tools designed to give formal feedback related to staff concerns. So for example, at the Learning Bar, we offer the staff survey framework, which includes 20 measures designed to capture key metrics of employee health and well-being. And by adopting data-driven approaches, your school can develop staff-focused strategies that ultimately help all staff and the school climate overall. So you've heard a lot from me. Now, before I move on for the last section of this presentation, I'd like to hear a little bit from you. And earlier on, we went through some of the main challenges that you responded to. So let me ask you now, how are you measuring success? I'm going to give you a couple seconds to write down some of the responses in the chat section. And Nikki, you can let me know if any of those come through.
I will let people type some things in first.
Again, how are you measuring success?
We are monitoring staff absences, conversations with staff, excuse me, feedback from staff regarding professional development. Benita, I was wondering whether you could elaborate a little bit on that one. Is it just the quality or the subjects of the professional development? I'd be interested in that. Making time for staff check-ins and having conversations with supportive colleagues really sounds quite a lot like mentoring as well, and leaning on those employees that you know that you can confide in. Survey by Panorama on or Guarding Minds. So Benita responded and she said the change in their practices and what they're doing in the classroom. So that that was in a response to the professional learning there. And there's a few more coming in, so keep an eye out on the chat, and that will be quite insightful, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki, and thank you for sharing, everyone. It seems like a lot of those sentiments echo some of the things that we're talking about today. So that's great to hear. And as you progress through your journey to address staff well-being and try to understand the collective voice of your entire school, you need to consider the types of information that you can have to better support staff well-being. And with relation to that, there's a strong relationship between data-driven decision-making and school effectiveness. School leadership is instrumental in creating that data-driven culture, yet many struggle to understand how and what they should do to intervene and create a healthier, more productive work environment. The OurSCHOOL Staff Survey collects data on 20 valid and reliable measures of well-being and engagement, and these indicators are supported by extensive research and reflect key metrics related to positive organizational climate, staff satisfaction, and well-being. And they can all be measured at the individual staff member level and aggregated to the school, division, or provincial levels for the purpose of goal setting and improvement planning. And there are many different factors that influence staff's attitudes and experiences related to their jobs, but capturing accurate perspectives will help you to determine the specific professional, emotional, and practical supports that are most beneficial for your staff. School leaders need to make a positive school climate a priority, but a shared vision requires trust among all. So understanding staff perceptions and acting on that collective voice within your school community is an ongoing process. In order to improve staff outcomes, school communities need the power of data to guide decision-making supported by data-driven interventions. And one way to track progress towards your goals is to include perception data into formal action plans. And then sharing those action plans is also key to informing your school community about how you will improve. And it's worth noting that we will be sending out an action plan template for you all via email. And then you can share those results associated with those plans to embed data-driven decision-making within your school culture. The important part is that you are engaging your school community with the results. Every individual within the school system, they all have important roles to play in ensuring a positive school culture. And perception surveys like OurSCHOOL, they provide a forum for the school community, including school staff, of course, to lend their voice to decisions that most impact them. And when measured year over year, school leaders can evaluate the effectiveness of their strategic actions. So consequently, over time, supports become more and more effective, resulting in increased engagement, reduced stress, improved safety in the workplace, and increased job satisfaction. So we've reached the end of our presentation. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, just like to thank everyone for their time today.